Hi everybody and welcome to Heel Heat. My name is George Coles. This is my tag team partner, Johnny Grunge.
Thanks, Rocco Rock. Gary Rhodes, everybody.
And this is a Heel Heat Top 10. The topic of this Top 10 is the Top 10 Worst Gimmicks. And since I have the worst co-host in wrestling, I'll let you start it off, Gary.
The worst co-host, second to you. Number 10 is going to be one of the most ridiculous costumes I ever saw in my life. Mantar. Mantar was managed by James E. Cornette. I think he lasted, what 5 months?
Oh, 5 months or so.
Something like that.
He was half man, half bull.
And he's half or stupid.
All bullshit.
It was a terrible gimmick. The guy really got gassed by the time he got to the ring. It was really a bad showing.
Can you blame him? He had a 4-foot bull's head.
Oh yeah, I'm not saying that, but that's why it's part of the gimmick. That's why.
I wonder how much
matches were sorry.
I wonder if that head's still around somewhere, maybe in the Stanford offices.
Either that or it's in some steakhouse in Texas. Who knows?
That'd be a fun thing to own, wouldn't you? Don't you think so?
The best helmet gear ever is Vader's helmet. Sorry, not Darth Vader, but Big Van Vader.
Where he had the elephant helmet.
Yeah, with the smoke coming out. It was awesome.
Now, coming off of that, our number 9 guy was another very short-lived gimmick. While Hulk Hogan was suspended, I don't even remember why he was suspended.
I don't know, brother.
He played the masked gimmick, which a lot of wrestlers have, as Mr. America.
Terrible.
It was so obvious. I mean, it's been in the past, like when they did Andre as a giant machine, and when Dusty did his thing, what was it, the Midnight Runner or Midnight Trainer or something like that. But it's a gimmick that's been done over and over again since the 60s. This time, Mr. America was a big Hulk Hogan fan. That's why he looked like him and did Hulk Hogan's
little Hulkster brother.
The funny thing is, the gimmick was so bad that Hogan unmasked himself at a SmackDown taping. And they just killed the gimmick at that point. Mm-hmm. There was nothing good that came of it. The thing that I went to see, because you had Zach Allen was brought in on that, which he was decent, not bad. He was the right one-legged wrestler.
Exactly.
And you had Sean O'Hare with Piper at the time. And Piper was probably at the worst shape of his life.
Oh, he was terrible.
But I thought Sean O'Hare was going to get a nice push off of that, which didn't end up materializing. But overall, the gimmick was garbage. It was 20 years past when it would have worked.
Well, Hogan's other name should be The Undertaker, because he's buried more people than anybody else in the business.
There you go.
Oh, yeah.
Shoot.
Yeah, well, it is what it is, player. Now, our number 8, great performer, also great with face paint, but not in this character, Black Rain, Dustin Runnels, Dustin Rhodes, Gold Dust, whatever you want to call him, but Black Rain was one of the worst gimmicks I've ever seen in my life.
Yep.
I didn't get into it. It was like, I almost wish they would have done the same thing to that character as they did to Seven, and just kill it or just kill it like right off the start.
Yeah. And that's what it was. It was almost like Vince Russo said, "Okay, I'm going to do 7 again." Because was he was he black and silver as Black Rain?
No, Black Rain Black Rain was black and silver, and the 7 was all white faced.
Yeah. But it was ridiculous. It was their attempt not to use Gold Dust, but basically rip off the Gold Dust gimmick. And
it's like a hardcore Gold Dust.
Yeah, it was hardcore Gold Dust, and the matches he had were terrible. I believe, if I remember correctly, Dustin Rhodes was at one of the worst points of his career, of his life.
Yeah. And
he hated being there. He hated doing Black Rain, which isn't tremendously different than Gold Dust. However, Gold Dust had the spark to it.
Oh, Gold Dust was an awesome character
that Black Rain never had. Now, speaking of someone that had a spark, our number 7 guy had a huge spark in TNA, got signed to WWE, was going to do great things, and that's Braden Walker, a.k.a. Chris the Wildcat Harris. One of the big, huge stars of the early TNA shows as part of America's Most Wanted with James Storm, also seemed to be the guy that was supposed to be the Shawn Michaels of the group, not Storm.
He ended up being the Jannetty by far.
Well, he shows up on WWE at the ECW show, overweight, wearing a singlet, and having a horrible name, Braden Walker. He had 2 weeks he was there. I think he did one match and one backstage promo. The backstage promo was knock knock. Who's there? Braden Walker. That's who. It was terrible from the beginning. Terrible.
You know, the thing is,
it made me go Cleveland.
The thing is,
and you know, I hate Ohio.
Yeah. The thing is with Braden Walker, anybody else could have pulled it off. I think. You know, it wasn't that. It wasn't. It was just the way it was presented. I think because they've had champion wrestlers before.
The fact that he came in
out of shape.
Oh yeah. And the whole thing, the corny backstage stuff, the fact that it only lasted 2 weeks, gets him on our list.
No, it was terrible.
Terrible.
Now speaking of something that's terrible, I saw this. I only think he was on television one time. Our number 6, the Yeti, from was it the 1996 Halloween Havoc was when he debuted, when it was Hogan versus Big Show or
the Giant
at the time. For the
when Giant was still in the Dungeon of Doom,
you know,
and they were still saying he
was his debut. It was his debut match, the WCW title. That's where he won it from. And the Yeti and the Giant did that awful double
bear hug that looked like Hulk Hogan was getting raped from both ends.
Exactly. No means no, guys. And the Yeti, apparently, I can't remember his real name. He was pretty big overseas, but he was pretty fucking terrible here. One of the most forgettable characters I could think of.
Well, he's memorable for the wrong reasons.
Exactly.
I thought it was terrible. Like you said, the simulated rape. A lot of the Dungeon of Doom stuff was terrible. Other than the Taskmaster, the Shark I thought was cool.
Well,
the Faces of Fear were cool, and King Curtis I thought was cool.
They should have left it with the King Curtis and the Taskmaster, and just left a lot of the other shit. They could have brought the Giant in, but instead of going so cartoony with it. That was, you know, back at that point was when WCW was all about the kids, and when NWO came out, that's when it became wrestling.
Exactly. Now, our number 5 guy is also a WCW gimmick. A guy that they hyped up heavily bringing him in, the Renegade. Now, I don't know, you know, some of our older fans may remember this, some of your newer fans probably don't. But in the promos, they put him far enough away from the camera that you thought it was the Warrior, and he even had his face painted and wore gear like the Warrior.
Except for he had the singlet. But
the Warrior started wearing the singlet, remember?
Yeah, towards the end of his WWE run, or WWF run then. It was just a terrible character. Bad booking, green as baby shit wrestler, and that's what happens.
And he was a cheap Warrior knockoff. And the fans never got into it. They switched his gimmick after about a month. They switched him to being like a more of a Native American style gimmick.
Yeah. Dude, it was just terrible.
Even when he did that, he did the face paint with the R on his face. He was relegated to a jobber rather soonly. And he came in, I think he won the TV title off of Arn Anderson, didn't he?
Yeah, I think it was Arn that he won it from.
It was terrible. It was mid-90s WCW was probably some of the worst wrestling that's ever been on TV. And that's including AWA.
Now, going back to our WWF show, part of the show, our number 4, Thanksgiving wouldn't be Thanksgiving without the Goblin Hoover. The worst thing I could ever remember about Thanksgiving was that egg cracking on that Wednesday night and that chicken leg.
It was Thursday. It was actually when they
was
still
that on Thanksgiving? I can't.
Yeah, it was when they still were doing it on Thanksgiving.
That's right. They went to Eve and then back to Sundays. But anyways, it was one of the worst gimmicks I ever saw in my life.
Luckily, he was only there for one show. Well, he's come back.
Yeah, but
since, but
the whole hype was what's in the egg? What's in the egg? Then it's the Goblin Hoover.
You know what I read? That was the same time that they signed Flair. That originally Flair was going to come out of the egg. But someone they said, or it was either Flair or Taker. And Taker thought he was coming out of the egg because that's the same night Taker debuted.
Taker debuted, yeah.
And Taker thought he was going to come out of the egg, and he was telling Percy Pringle at the time, who ended up being Paul Bearer, that if I come out of that egg, it's going to ruin my career. Which, to his credit, Hector Herrera, a great worker, one of the legendary Guerrero families. It didn't hurt his career.
No, that was a paycheck for him.
But it was a gimmick that went terribly wrong, and gladly they got rid of it really quickly. The segment with Mean Gene now is so horrible. where he's dancing with Mean Gene that it's so bad it's fun.
You can tell Mean Gene was probably coked up. Anyways.
So was the Gooker.
Oh, I'm sure he was.
Whoever wrote that
was coked up.
Exactly.
Looked like something that Ole Anderson would have wrote. Maybe he was booking it for them.
Could have been. Now, coming off of that, our number 3 guy comes from about the same era. WWF at the time hired 2 wrestlers at the same time, Terry Taylor and Curt Hennig. And they both were going to be given a certain gimmick. I wonder what that gimmick might have been.
That's right. Perfect.
Well, Curt Hennig gets Mr. Perfect. Terry Taylor gets the Red Rooster. Now, Terry Taylor, by all accounts, is a very gifted wrestler. He did some great stuff in the NWA, in WCW's early days. Even as a Red Rooster, he had some good stuff. I don't think his heart was ever into getting the character over. He didn't put the effort into it like a guy like Coco Beware, who was given a crap gimmick, did.
And that's the only reason he's on this list. I mean, because he could have made that gimmick work if he put his heart into it. Anybody can make any gimmick work.
It's something I remember we had the conversation one time, because that's a story that either him or Hennig could have been perfect.
It was in Perfect's book.
But we had the story. If it would have switched and Hennig would have got the Red Rooster would be the one you remember now, and Mr. Perfect would be forgotten.
Hennig got the perfect gimmick because
he's perfect.
I mean, he was. He played darts, horseshoes, everything like that with all the boys, and he was beating all their asses.
That, and he was probably one of the top 5 athletically gifted wrestlers of all time.
It's nice hearing that. Usually you knock my voice up, but I hear it kind of...
It made your little heart grow 3 sizes.
Grew 3 sizes that day.
Anyway.
Oh. Alright, back to... Sorry about that. Anyways, our number 2 was just so terrible. So terrible. And it offended 2 groups of people, by the way. Hockey fans and wrestling fans. We're talking about the Goon, folks. I mean, this guy did not please at all. Like I said, either hockey fans hated his guts or wrestling fans. Best of both worlds.
And that's the reason why he's so high on our list.
Because you're a hockey fan.
Well, I'm a huge hockey fan as well as a wrestling fan. And this guy came out, it was so ridiculous. At the time, WWF was very ridiculous anyway. But this offended me on so many levels. Not only was he a bad hockey gimmick, a bad wrestling gimmick, it kind of came out around the time of Happy Gilmore. They were trying to play up the same sort of thing where he's been kicked out of hockey leagues for being too violent. The guy was terrible. He's a guy that was on World Class as Wild Bill Irwin, if I remember correctly.
Wild Bill Irwin, yeah.
And he wrestled in AWA, and I think he even did some NWA WCW stuff at the time as Wild Bill Irwin. A mid-card wrestler at the best. A guy, not a bad wrestler.
No.
Nothing. Most of these guys on this list are actually really good. Just the gimmicks they got given were shit. But,
except for number 9.
But anyway, the Goon offended me so bad. It was a bad wrestling gimmick, bad hockey gimmick. It annoyed me so bad. I think they brought him in at the time hockey was in a strike. It's kind of like another one we're going to talk about in a minute that they did the same thing with. And it was just so terrible. And the worst thing about it is he wore a kind of a New Jersey Devils looking costume or ring gear, which even offended me more because that's my least favorite team.
Well, I thought they were your boys.
No.
Who knew?
But it was terrible. Now, before we go into our number 1, we do a little thing on our top 10s called the best of the rest. Basically, these are guys that didn't quite make the list, but they're just as bad and need to be brought up. Now, this is in no particular order. The first guy was PN News.
The wrestling rapper.
From the early days of WCW, both WCW and WWF tried rapping gimmicks. Men on a Mission was a little more successful. Wasn't good by any stretch of the means. PN News was a white kid from Nebraska who rapped in a style that by the time he started... Well, whatever it would be.
Okay.
But anyway, by the time he started his gimmick, the style of rap he was using was already phased out.
Yo baby, yo baby, yo.
he was doing early 80s Curtis Blow rep in the early 90s, which was all Public Enemy and NWA and, you know, hard.
Good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that style, not Curtis Blow is bad, but it was so outdated and it so didn't fit the character, and you knew the person behind it didn't fit into that, and that's what made him bad.
All right. Speaking of a musical bad character, I want to go with the Kiss Demon. Just terrible. And he actually still works with TNA sometimes.
Yeah.
No, he's in baseball.
No, he works with I think he works with the Marlins.
Yeah, because he did a couple of little stints with them, cross brand and stuff. But I mean, it's not, the guy had a good build to him. It was just a terrible gimmick.
Well, they brought him in. They were originally going to bring all 4 Kiss members. We're going to have Kiss wrestlers. And when they brought it in, it got shit on. They did a little Kiss concert. He came out of an egg, our second character to come out of an egg. And it was just terrible. The guy wasn't a bad wrestler.
No.
Even when he was still the Kiss Demon and teaming up with Vampiro, I thought it was decent. But it was just so bad and so much of a rip-off. So much not what the fans wanted.
Well, it was at a bad point in WCW where they were just trying to get anything to get any bit of ratings.
Yep. Now, another guy we have on our list is a Berserker. John Nord. Who was John Nord, a.k.a. Nord the Barbarian in AWA. A really good, kind of a knockoff Bruiser Brody, even though he was billed originally as a Bruiser Brody disciple or someone that Bruiser Brody trained in AWA. The guy, he was a Brody knockoff. They brought him into WWE and made him a Viking. He even wore the Viking hat, and I think he came out with a sword and shield.
He had a sword. Remember, he put the sword into the ring trying to get the Undertaker.
Yep.
That was one of Undertaker's first face opponents.
And he was just terrible.
Not the wrestling was, just the gimmick was just...
Yeah, the gimmick was terrible.
The whole huss. I don't know. You can't blame the athlete on that one. Next, we are going to blame... No, we're not going to blame the athlete on this one. We were talking about the Gooner earlier. We're going to talk about Abe Knuckleball Schwartz. The Schwartz is with you. Played
by Steve Lombardi, a.k.a. the Brooklyn Brawler. A.k.a. Doink number 2 or 3 or whatever Doink he was.
Steve Lombardi is a mainstay in the company.
Yep.
No matter whatever people say about him, positive or negative, the guy is part of WWF. He's one of the cornerstones of the company. I mean, he'll do whatever Vince tells him to do.
Yep. And he's probably the most well-known jobber of all time.
Oh, of course.
Him and Horowitz. But he was, this again, they brought Abe Knuckleball Schwartz in when Major League Baseball was on strike, and their thing was the WWE never goes on strike, and he had his face painted like a baseball, came out wearing, I think it was a Cincinnati Reds knockoff kind of look he had. It was terrible. It was something that probably should have never been done. I don't remember which came first, him or the Goon, but whichever came first, they should have known by the second one not to try it again.
It was pretty close.
Yeah.
Lombardi just did his best with the character. I mean, thank God it didn't last that long. I mean, Brooklyn Brawlers has been his mainstay forever. And that's, like we said, that's the best jobber of all time. If we did a jobbers list, that would top the list.
Coming soon?
Yeah, I like that idea.
Now, that's the best of the rest. Now, if you guys have anything you want to say, if you think we made it, put a guy up too high, put a guy down too low, let us know on our Facebook, hit us up on our Twitter, put it down where?
Down there.
Down in our comments. And, we'd like to hear your opinions of our lists. Now, the number 1 guy is something they heavily hyped. He was going, his first match in WCW was going to be at a pay-per-view, teaming with 2 legends, a British Bulldog and Sting, versus Vader
and
Harlem Heat.
No, it was
Sid and Harlem Heat. And they brought him out on a Flair for the... Was it a Flair for the Gold? Yep. Flair for the Gold, the Shockmaster. He came in, in the run-through, there wasn't a beam in the wall, and he walked through the wall, did it fine. On live TV, he trips over a beam that was added later. His mask, which is a glittery stormtrooper mask, rolls off. He tries to stumble and get it. It's played by Fred Ottman, who was Tugboat, Typhoon.
A great worker,
Yeah, for a big guy, he was tremendous. But this was absolutely terrible. probably one of the most made fun of gimmicks ever. He stayed around a little bit longer after that, but never quite got the impact they wanted him to.
Now, do you think the Shockmaster would have got over if it wasn't for the trip?
Oh, he probably would have. At that era, he fit right into what they were doing.
The trip just killed it.
The fact that he had Davey Boy and Sting as co-signers, kind of, saying he's on their
legit.
level,
Yeah.
would have made him, I think. And, it's sad to say that he didn't quite work out for Fred Ottman, who, like we said, is a good worker everywhere else.
Natural Disasters is one of the best tag teams of all time, and they've never really getting the credit for it. But, like you say.
But basically, that's all we have. You got anything else you need to add?
That's it. Play it.
This has been our top 10 worst gimmicks list. My name is George Coles.
Gary Rhodes.
And this is Heel Heat.